What's up? I'm B and welcome to my channel. I feel very, not apprehensive, but unsure in this moment because obviously you can't see me, which means I am not filming with a camera. And I am so used to filming with a camera that, and like looking at it, making eye contact with it, that I don't know where to look right now because I don't have one in front of me. So I'm just going to picture all y'all's beautiful faces standing in front of me as if we were like sitting together in a circle having a chat, and hopefully I can settle into this new format. For a very long time, I've wanted to go into podcasts and do reactions to those because there are so many personal development, spirituality, encouragement, girl boss, all of these big influencers in that sphere have podcasts. Whenever I want to evaluate them or bring some of their content to light, I don't know necessarily how to do it. I have to look for something that's in video format to make it entertaining to watch visually because you can see them speaking. But when it comes to a podcast, I don't know, I felt like I would feel awkward having just audio playing and having y'all look at my face. So we're trying something new. I want to see how this pans out. Maybe I will just end up releasing this on a podcast platform as well as on YouTube. So that way, if you don't want to have a video running for however long this video is going to take, like open up on YouTube, you want to be able to click your phone closed and put it in your pocket and walk around, then you can do that. And then you can come over to my channel and talk about what's going on. So anyway, having said all that, you'll have to let me know your thoughts on this format, on this type of content, if it's something you're interested in, if you're feeling it, XYZ, all that. Let's get into Rachel Hollis. It's been a while since we've talked about her on my channel, but I recently saw that she released an episode on July 5th of the Rachel Hollis podcast titled Reflecting on a Year of Singleness. And the description, it's an interesting one. It says, this week is slightly more on the personal side. July 2nd, 2021 is when I sat down to record this. July 2nd, 2020 was the day I moved out of the house that I shared with my now ex-husband. I met my ex-husband when I was 18, and when I got divorced last year, I was grappling with that pain, but also the fear of living alone as a grown adult for the first time. I want to talk with y'all and reflect on a year of singleness and living alone and some of the lessons I've learned. That's the topic. Before we get into it, I just want to point out, I don't want to be like the semantics police, but the title is Reflecting on a Year of Singleness. Rachel has not been single for a year. They announced their divorce on June 8th of 2020 on Rachel's Instagram. And I'm not quite sure when they started living as a divorced couple because obviously you've got legal things to go through, and when your business and personal life and finances are all intertwined, that's going to take a while to get sorted out. But I know that in early May of 2020, that was when Rachel told Dave that she wanted a divorce. So May is kind of our starting point that I would give her for venturing into singleness. And if she was single from May of 2020 to May of 2021, I would say, yep, that's fair. You spent a year alone, you reflected on yourself, blah, blah, blah. But in February of 2021, Rachel posted a video on her YouTube channel talking about how she was on a dating app. And in March 29th to be exact, she posted another video on YouTube talking about this mysterious motorcycle man that everyone was speculating was somebody she was dating. She spoke about him as if, oh, that's just a friend, but, she was kind of vague about who this person was, so it led to speculation. I don't know who he was or if this is the person that she's currently dating, but on June 7th, she started talking about this person that she was dating, who she met on this app and who became one of her friends, and then it eventually morphed into something more. So maybe technically she didn't have a boyfriend or a partner for a year, but I wouldn't necessarily call that a year of singleness. But I guess all of that is maybe nitpicky. I don't know. I just feel like Rachel has a flair for dramatizing things and making them seem like something they're not. And that's a common pattern with her. It bugs me. So whenever I see it, even if it's just in the tiniest form, I gotta jump on it. But I'm gonna try to not be nitpicky throughout this whole thing. Let's just go ahead and hear what Rachel learned, what she's reflecting on. Let's hear it all.
This week is interesting, maybe something that's a bit more on the personal side than I might normally do in one of my solo episodes, but it feels fitting because I am recording this on July 2nd, 2021. And exactly 1 year ago today, on July 2nd, 2020, I moved out of the house that I shared with my now ex-husband. I moved out of the house that my kids were in. I moved away from home and into a new home. And it was one of the hardest, scariest, and also exciting times of my life. And there's so many big, heavy emotions last year on this day. And I thought,
okay, I'm gonna have to see if I can speed this up. All right, we're up to 1.25, so let's see if that gets us through it just a little bit quicker without being too overwhelmingly fast.
Man, I'd love to talk about what I've learned in a year of being on my own, in a year of being single. And maybe you're listening to this, you're like, well, who cares? There are people who are single all the time. But the interesting thing about my story, if you're not familiar, is that I met my ex-husband when I was 18 and I had never gone on a date before, ever. Like I had zero experience. And so when I got divorced last year, I found myself like beyond grappling with getting divorced and how painful that was and what it meant for my kids and the end of this thing, like just beyond all of that, which is so much. I also was grappling with really never having been on my own, like as a grown up. It definitely.
For sure, I will give her that. This is why I'm a big proponent of dating people before you settle down. I mean, sometimes you meet the first person that you're ever interested in that's interested in you back, and you hit it off, and things go off like gangbusters, happily ever after. If that happens for you, great. But I think we need to, if we're approaching this from a religious standpoint, we need to encourage kids to just date around, have fun. Don't be looking for a spouse so quickly that you don't really understand what your values are and what's important to you in a partner, and you can just fully know the kind of person that you would like to be with. And of course, that's not going to guarantee that you'll never get divorced or have a bad relationship or anything like that. But I definitely have some empathy for Rachel in this situation of this is the first person she dated. They got married. They've been together. They've been married for 16 years, or they were married for 16 years. And I'm sure that is really scary getting back out there and wondering, well, I don't have any dating experience really, so what is this even gonna look like? What's it gonna be like? I do have a soft spot for her in that.
Lived with a roommate in LA before I met my ex-husband, and then I definitely had, I think, a year in an apartment by myself. But even then I was, 19 years old. Like I just had no idea what I was doing. So this was really the first time that I felt like I was a grown up and I was single and I was living in a house and just all the stuff. It's a lot of things. And I feel like I've learned so much in the last year about myself and just, man, what it all means, right? And so on the anniversary of this day, I thought I would talk to you about some of the lessons I learned when I was journaling this morning. I was journaling like what I had learned in the last 12 months, and I'm going to talk you through them now. And maybe you'll find it interesting if you're going through a big life transition, or maybe you'll just find it interesting because sometimes it's fun to hear about other people's drama. But this is what this week's episode is about. 1 year post moving out of my house and into a new place. So I guess where we should start with probably why it felt like such an extra big deal when I moved out. There are a few reasons. So I think he has made it very clear that it was not his decision. And so I'll just say I said that I wanted a divorce in May. And I said that I wanted a divorce after probably 5 years of us talking about it and trying and struggling and working, and then having like beautiful, joyful seasons and like great things and exciting things. And then all the problems that were there were just still there. And I think, really interesting thing that came out of.
Just have to pause it to point out that in her announcement, she said that it was 3 years that they were endlessly trying to make it work. I mean, again, it's one of those things that could just be considered a blurry detail. I don't know the motivation there would be behind embellishing that or minimizing it at different points. I have no idea unless the angle is to really emphasize that she tried for 5 whole years to make it work and it couldn't because I don't know, she's mad that Dave's the one who I guess outed her. I I understand why he said it. Like if you're getting backlash for presenting yourselves as these relationship gurus and these marriage experts, and then all of a sudden you're getting divorced without really any signs that you've given to the public that you're going through these really, relationship breaking times, when it just comes out of the blue to your audience, I can see how you would want to say, hey, not my choice. That was not me. This was Rachel, and it hurt.
Having a public relationship and then a public divorce was, I got a lot of really pretty hateful backlash from people. I still try and not have anger about the fact that he didn't get any backlash, but that I did, mostly from women. In fact, I don't know that any men cared, but just a large contingent of women who, said that I would.
Again, this is something that I will give her. I am sure that she got more backlash than he did, although I would contend that she really is the face of the relationship and the face of the company. It's Rachel Hollis's business, her vision, what she wants, and he came in later. Yes, he played a significant role in their Rise Together podcast and in their marriage conferences and all of that, and he should be held accountable too. I don't think anybody should be giving them hate necessarily. I've seen some pretty hurtful and vile things said to Rachel in her comment section, so I don't think people should be leaving anything like that for either of them. But I do think we should also, point out Dave too and say, hey, if you guys have been working for 3 to 5 years to save this marriage, you knew just as much as she did that something was up, something was off. So you played a role in perpetuating a false narrative and selling something that wasn't real to your audience. So they should both be, I don't know, on the chopping block for that, I guess, metaphorically.
Bad and wrong and evil and how dare I do this thing. And what I find so crazy about that situation is that nobody publicly knows what happened but me and my ex-husband. Nobody. And I made a very conscious decision to not talk about it. In fact, if you looked at social media at any time over the last year, one of us has talked a lot, and it's not me. And I made that choice because,
well, she's also been very scarce on social media because of her various unrelated controversies, but sure.
I wanted to be respectful of my children, because as much as my kids aren't on social, their friends are. And I also think social media will last forever. And so you could open up, I don't know, something 10 years from now and find what one parent said about the other. So I made a very conscious decision to not tell that story. And
I think this is a good point in terms of not bashing your ex-spouse, because one, it's not necessarily a good look, especially considering their line of business, but also her saying that implies that Dave has bashed her, and maybe he has. I definitely do not keep up with everything that he says or does online, but I did like a scan through. I was looking through specific dates, so I was going through Dave's Instagram, and even after the divorce, there's lots of pictures of Rachel on there, like Rachel with Noah, with their baby, with their other kids, talking about good memories that they've had and built together. So again, I don't know, maybe he has said some derogatory things about her, but it's fair to talk about the divorce, and it's fair to talk about what you're going through and to be honest about it, as long as you're being respectful, I think. of that spouse, both knowing that you're in the public eye and your kids will see it one day.
And I won't, because it feels like the respectful thing to do. And so I will keep that to myself. But I think me knowing what really happened and then me being publicly shamed for making that choice, it feels so hurtful. And a year ago, I was deep in it because I honestly never thought I could see absolutely that our fan base might be disappointed. Like I was disappointed when Blake Shelton and Miranda Lambert got divorced. Like I'm still upset about that. So I totally get being disappointed, but I never expected other women to, without any information, take sides and say hurtful things. And so I was grappling with all of these painful things that are involved in ending a relationship.
I'm not taking sides. I think they both are at fault for various things. And obviously, like she said, we don't know what actually happened. We do know that there was a massive power imbalance when Rachel and Dave first got together, that he treated her horribly, that it took her breaking up with him and not talking to him for him to come to his senses and finally, I guess, treat her in a way that she found acceptable. But understanding that, I'm sure there are a lot of things that Dave did that were wrong, that were not okay, that made Rachel feel bad. And I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there were things that she did that made him feel like he was either disrespected or not treated in the way that he wanted to be treated. I'm sure there is hurt on both sides. But you have to understand, Rachel, when you have marriage conferences and a podcast about your relationship and you're giving advice to other couples on how to achieve what you have, and then it comes out that not only are you getting divorced, but you've been struggling and working endlessly to make your marriage last for the past 3 years, 3 to 5 years, I guess, you are going to get backlash. People are going to be upset. People bought into your narrative that they are finding out now is false. So yeah, people are going to be mad.
That has been going on for, at that point, had been 18 years. And trying to navigate the public. And it was so painful and it was so hard. And it was in the midst of, COVID was still at its peak. It was going nuts. And we were still, in lockdown on and off. And it just was such a wild time. And I remember trying to find a place to live. I'm just going to be super honest about what this process felt like. Maybe if some of you are going through a breakup or going through a divorce, I don't know, maybe this will be helpful. But I remember that I needed to find a place to live. And it felt so impossible inside of COVID. And I just so desperately wanted to find a place that was good for my kids and could be a home and could be something that they felt comfortable in. And I was I had so much anxiousness and insomnia of just not being able to find a place because, I told him the decision that I had made in May and I didn't move out until July. That's how long it took. And I don't know if you...
From May to July, that's how long it took. Look, I'm sure it's not fun living with somebody that you are in the process of getting divorced from. I am sure that comes with a lot of complex emotions and just uncomfortable situations. I can't imagine that was a fun experience, but that's 2 months. 2 months to find a place, Rachel. Think about it in terms of the average person. I mean, my husband and I have been looking at a house to buy for, gosh, when did we first contact a lender? March of 2020, and we're in August. We're in August of 2021. And obviously we've had some other things pop up, getting custody of the kids and just various things. The housing market is just wild right now. So there's been some unpredictability happening, but we've been looking for a year and a half and we haven't found something that fits our needs that we are ready to jump on. So 2 months, yeah, like I said, sure. I'm sure it was not fun, but it was only 2 months. Have some perspective here.
Ever had to live in a house or a place with someone you broke up with, and it was awful, so awful for us both. Not because we were fighting, and I think when when there was backlash from the public or people, or friends or family would be like, we never saw you fight. Yeah, because that's not our style. We weren't fighters. We were the kind of people who talk through everything, and still do, by the way, to this day. But just because you don't fight doesn't mean there's not a lot of pain there and a lot of resentment. And it felt like I don't want to be overly dramatic, but it felt like torture. I mean, just every day in that space, and both of us hurting so much and just having to see each other all the time. And oh my gosh, it was so hard. And the decision to move out of the house wasn't mine. I mean, ultimately it was mine, but essentially it was because I was the one who made the decision. Then he felt like I was the one who should have to leave. And honestly, that like, I'm just going to preface and say, like, I'm telling y'all like a very true and personal story, but this is not anything about him. Like, it doesn't matter how great people are as human beings. If you go through a divorce, it's going to be painful and it's going to be hard, and there are going to be parts of it that are ugly. And so I'm telling you a very honest recounting, but it's nothing negative about him. And I think people get this wrong so often, that I will tell a story about Dave and they're like, oh, now you're like talking crap about Dave. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm telling you my truth. And he has his own truth that honestly he's gone into quite a lot of detail about. So this isn't anything negative about him. It's just how it worked out. How it worked out was that I had to move out of the home I had made. And I at first felt so defeated by that. I don't know if any of you have experienced something similar, but I felt so defeated. Like, I just kept thinking, there's not a pillow in this house that I didn't choose. There's not a painting on the wall that I didn't get at a flea market, in LA 10 years ago. There's nothing here that I didn't like put and make as part of our home. And so the idea of leaving it felt just absolutely insane to me.
I have quite a few thoughts on this. When I first heard that she was the one who had to move out, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. She wants the divorce. She should go. But also knowing what I know about Dave and Rachel, I'm kind of wondering if it was a power move on Dave's part. I mean, we do not know why. We do not know the concrete reason why, or the straw that broke the camel's back that led to the divorce. So it's easy to take that dislike for Rachel and say, well, we don't like her. She's fake. She's problematic. She's always getting in scandals, blah, blah, blah. She's probably the reason that they got divorced, and she's the one who asked for it. So, yep, she's got to go. But again, knowing what we know about Dave, and just going back to that 3% conversation, which if you don't know what that is, Rachel was talking to Dave about how she was trying to get a deal for her business, and she was really excited about it. And essentially Dave shut her down and said, well, there's a 3% chance that that's going to happen. When the deal went through, she bought herself a gold bracelet that had 3% stamped in it. And so knowing that maybe he, yes, financially supported her, but emotionally wasn't always there for her, or was very dismissive of her goals at times, according to stories that she's told, it would not surprise me if there were things done on his end that did not meet her needs, or things that were done on his end that were incredibly hurtful for her. And I don't really like defending Rachel Hollis, but I'm gonna do it when I feel like it needs to be done, when I feel like that's the right thing. So anyway, I can understand how that would feel like such a blow, especially if, maybe he was the one doing the things and not willing to change and not willing to improve. If he was the one actively causing the problems and she decided she wasn't going to put up with it anymore, and now she has to move out of her home for, drawing a line of, well, you're not going to treat me like this anymore. Again, this is all speculation. I feel like that would be so hurtful.
I will say in retrospect, I am so grateful that it worked out the way that it did, because I'm probably going to get so much crap for this and he would laugh at me. But like, I don't know that he would have been able. Yeah, he would have been able. But like, I don't know what kind of job he would have done at like trying to like go make a home, especially during COVID. Not to say that men can't decorate, can't make homes. They do it all the time. But honestly, I can't, like, we laughed about it later. Like, oh my gosh, like do you even know where to buy a sofa? Like, it would have been hilarious. So
do you even know where to buy a sofa? As if furniture stores don't exist, as if he couldn't hire an interior decorator. I mean, come on. This isn't like, I don't know, y'all are two struggling mid 20-year-olds, splitting your stuff up and trying to make your own homes. You guys are wealthy. Dave could have made a home. And isn't it so funny that Dave's just so incompetent with everything in terms of a homemaking? He couldn't even buy a sofa. Bro, they got sofas on Amazon now. That could be at your house within 2 days.
For what it's worth, if you are going through something like this, maybe that's a way to reframe it. I had a girlfriend who went through a divorce about 6 months after I did, and she's so sad about moving out. And I was like, yeah, but you can make a whole new beautiful home for your babies. And he might go and just make like a bachelor pad, right? And my parents were divorced. That's what my dad did. My friend's parents, same thing. That's what her dad did. She was like, oh, you're right. Yeah, at least this way I can make something that I know the kids will feel really comfortable in. So it was hard and it sucked, but it was what it was, you know?
I feel bad that that's her experience with her parents getting divorced, but I do also want to just point out that they were not wealthy. Rachel's family was not wealthy growing up, so it's entirely possible that, I mean, I don't know, her dad, maybe he is a piece of work, but it's entirely possible that he, quote unquote, created a bachelor pad because he didn't have money to furnish a new home.
Divorce is painful. Moving into this place, I feel like I was guided by God, by angels, by my guardian angels, because when I started looking, I was so, oh my gosh, I was so nervous. I could not figure out. And I was going to go do this thing by myself, and I had to find a place that my kids would like. And to be honest, I was really scared to live by myself when the kids were with their dad. I just had all of these fears. And when I started looking, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then randomly, except I don't believe in random, I happened to like find this little house in a search for something, and the pictures weren't very good. And I was kind of like, what is this? And I just sent it to my friend. I'm like, hey, do you think we could try and go look at this one? And so we looked. I took Jackson with me, which I highly recommend if you have kids. That was a big and important thing, was him being able to feel like he was part of the process. The other boys, were like sort of like whatever, but Jackson really cared, and I took him with me. So he had an opinion in Jackson's my oldest, so he had an opinion in everything. And we walked into all sorts of places, and I just honestly, it just like each one was sort of more discouraging than the rest. And I thought, oh Lord, I'm going to end up having to get a bachelor pad like my dad, even though that's not what I want to do. And then we came to this place, and I remember walking through the house, and there was a little garden on the side yard, and that just made my heart swell. And I walked out to the back patio, and I just like had this clarity in my mind of, I'm going to sit on this back patio and I'm going to heal. And it still isn't the most ideal house. Like, it's pretty small for me and 4 kids. And Noah's bedroom, it was like an office that was converted, but like I made it cute. Don't worry. The boys have to share a room. Like, it's not what they have at their dad's. There isn't a pool. There isn't a trampoline. There isn't go-karts. There's like it doesn't have all the bells and whistles, but it is this sacred ground for me. And it really is that moment of clarity of like, what do you need? Like, what's the intention? What do you need out of this? And what I needed was safety. What I needed was a feeling of security, and I needed a place to heal. And that is a really important thing to ask, I think, in a process like this. And I know that even me having the ability to go get another place was a huge deal, because I walked through this with my girlfriend where, she was a homemaker. She was a stay-at-home mom and was and still is dependent on her soon-to-be ex-husband. And it is so scary for women who don't have financial security, or their financial security is wrapped up in someone else. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times I have counseled women in my community who have a partner who's abusive, or who have a partner who cheats on them, or who have a partner and they have stayed far longer than they should because they don't have another option. So even having the ability to go somewhere else was massive. And
that is a really terrifying scenario to imagine being in. And so I'm very grateful that Rachel has drawn this comparison. I'm just glad that she's understanding what a position of privilege she is in. Maybe the house isn't everything she wanted. Okay, fine. She lives there for a year, 2 years, 3 years. And then once everything's officially clean cut with the divorce and the business and all that, she goes and buys a bigger place. Like I said, it's not her ideal home. But it is a home, and it is a home that she can afford because she is in this privileged position, and a lot of other people do not have that same luxury. So I'm very glad that she is bringing up that comparison and letting us know that she does understand. As much as it might not be her ideal situation, she's in a good spot.
I don't take that for granted for a second. When I moved out, which was a year ago today, because I signed the paper, whatever, got to move into this place. When I moved out of the other house, I took my clothes and some family heirlooms. It was, I loaded out my car. I think I did 2 or maybe 3 car loads, and I took nothing else. And I made that decision because I remember when my parents would split up, and they split up and got back together a lot. But I remember when one of them would move out, that they would like take the sofa or like take the pictures off the walls, or just, it was always so stressful as a little kid to sort of see your house get pulled apart. And so I made the conscious decision to only take things that really had very special value to me and that wouldn't disrupt the home for them. And I think like there's still a part of me that gets a little sad, like just to be honest, of this maybe sounds weird, but like the kids' rooms at the other house are so, oh man, I did not know this was going to make me emotional. Wow. Their rooms are so beautifully decorated. And I worked so hard to like figure out themes, and like, we worked with like the most amazing decorator, and like it was such a big deal. And I remember when those rooms were done at the old house, like I was so proud because I never had anything like that. I had like hand-me-down furniture and like just never. And I was so proud of how beautiful their rooms were and how they like spoke to their personalities. And it still makes me really sad that they don't have that here yet. Yeah, like they don't have that here yet. And I say yet because I hope that someday they will. But, it was when we first moved here, it was so hard to get anything. I don't know if any of y'all had to move in COVID or like get furniture or whatever. It was so impossible. I remember like I did not have furniture for months. For months, I didn't have furniture. I had a roof over my head, thank God. And I had mattresses on the floor. Thank God for that. Because the very first night I moved here, I slept on the floor. I had literally nothing. I remember every piece of furniture that would come in, I would literally like bawl, like sob crying. Like when I got a sofa, I'd cry because I just was so grateful for every piece of furniture. And you can't.
So going back to the point about being sad that the kids' rooms are decorated so beautifully at her old house and they're not there yet at her new one. I think it's easy to hear that and write it off as, oh, that's so superficial. Get over it. Your kids still have that there, like they have it. It's supposed to be about them having those good things, so you should just be, grateful that they do still have it, that you created it for them and they can still enjoy it when they are at their dad's house. But thinking about what we know about Rachel and how much material things do mean to her, I think maybe she could benefit from placing less importance on them, because material things are never going to be the thing that make you happy. Yes, having things like beds and couches and, a kitchen table and chairs, those are all things that are, important to have. Those are all good things. They make your house feel like a home. But having the best of everything is not going to make you happier than you were without it. I get that she has this sense of pride of, I didn't have these things when I was a kid. I had to have box cake mix as a child, and there were stains on the carpet of our apartment, and it was just so embarrassing. And she carries this with her, and I've criticized her for it because I'm like, yeah, you weren't wealthy as a kid. So many of us were not wealthy as kids. Get over it. Like, grow up, let it go. And I'll hold on to that because I think she's a little too materialistic for the wrong reasons. If you like nice things, who cares? I like nice things. I like to have them. But I understand that those nice things do not define me. So I get it. She did not have these things and she's giving them to her kids, and it means a lot for her to be able to present that to the world of, look at how far I've come. Look at what I've accomplished. Look what I'm giving my kids that I never would have had. So I can for sure understand why it hurts to not have that anymore, because she is carrying those feelings of what I can only assume are inadequacy and feeling lesser than others. I think she still holds those very close to her heart, And maybe she would benefit from working on that a little bit, from maybe going to therapy or counseling for getting rid of this sense of if it's not the best of the best, it's not enough. And she should maybe focus again, this is all my opinion, all my thoughts, who am I to tell somebody else how to live their life? But focus more on contentment. She talks so much about how gratitude is so important, and she makes these gratitude lists every day, and that's what she focuses on. That's how she guides her life, essentially, is by writing down. The one that sticks out to me from her book is how she writes every day on a piece of paper, I'm an excellent wife, which I'm sure she doesn't write anymore because she's not married. But she writes these things, and that's what she uses to guide her life. And gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. So focus on that, Rachel. Focus on the gratitude of being able to move out within 2 months. I'm sure it felt like a long time, but that is fast. That is so fast to be able to move out, find a new home. You are grateful for these things, and you should be grateful that your kids do still have that. Your kids are well taken care of. Your kids are not struggling in the same way that you felt you were struggling growing up. And I have empathy for that feeling of loss of not having, not having anything to quote unquote show for her work at her house. But those material things, they are not what is going to carry you through your life. They are not what is going to make you happy, what's going to make you fulfilled, what's going to make you content. We got to move on from them.
Understand it unless you've lived through it. You just can't. To not have those things, or honestly, they would come from this like amazing house at their dad's, and then they come here and I like had nothing. I had like a table set up, right? Or we could like play board games, and man, did we play board games. But it just made me sad. And there's still parts of it that make me sad because, you don't want to be like the place that is not as fun. But I feel like in terms of stuff, like having stuff, my house definitely isn't as fun as the other house they get to stay in half the time. But it for sure is fun in terms of energy and joy and play and laughter and watching movies and hanging out with each other and cooking and eating. And like, we have found a way. Might not be in a well-decorated room, but we have found a way, and we have gotten so close. I think that's something I could not possibly have fathomed before all of this, is how close I would become with my kids. I was so close to them before, and it is not even comparable to the relationship that we have now. We're sort of like, we were in a bunker together, because of COVID, and then going through the divorce. And I just wanted to be present for them, and I wanted to make sure that they were okay. And that has been beautiful, guys. As much as God, it sucked. It sucked so hard to go through all of those things. Coming out the other side is like these relationships I don't know if I ever would have had. So
I can tell you wouldn't have had them, because she's made it very clear in Girl Stop Apologizing that she doesn't do the mom things because she's doing the business thing. She's not going to pick you up from school. She's not going to go to your play if she has a business engagement that she'd rather go to that's more important. She made that very clear. And I'm not trying to judge. I don't know what her daily life with her kids looked like. But again, she made it very clear that those, everyday things were not her job. And she had nannies and other people to take care of those things for her. So I can guarantee you would not be as close with your kids as you are now, or as you're saying that you are now, without this entire situation.
Some goodness there. I think the thing that I didn't anticipate, but I want to make sure and talk about in case any of you are in this, is how much time I spent alone. I really process by myself. I do not like to process in a group. I don't want to do it with my friends. I don't want to talk it out. I really need to process and think and journal. And that is how I get through things. And I was alone. I was either with the kids because they're here half the week. So I was with the kids half the week, and then they would go home and I would work, and then I would be alone. And I was by myself, alone with my thoughts for months and months and months and months and months. And I don't know how much I buy that, considering she was still planning online events in that time, the virtual Rise Women's Weekend. There's a lot of planning that goes into that. She has a team. Her entire life
is intertwined with her business, and she has a full-on team that she's responsible for. I mean, she has a full-on company with employees, and she did end up letting a lot of them go in a not so great way. And I will link Savvy Writes Books video about that down below because it was very eye-opening. But I don't believe that she spent so much time alone. I don't. I think this is something that she's saying to make herself seem profound and like she's just so reflective, and she got so deep into her own emotions and her own processing journey. And I don't know, I'm not buying it. I hate to, I don't like calling people liars, but right, I don't buy it.
That it was the most important part of this process. And I have walked with a lot of friends through breakups this year and divorce this year. And I have seen so many people immediately jump back into a relationship, and everybody gets to process and deal however they need to. But I just can't think of something that would have been worse. And
okay, well, one other thing I will add is everybody moves on in their own time. There's no right timeline for moving on after divorce. But again, you're saying, oh, people moved on so quick and I had to spend so much time processing. What? Whatever. Rachel's reality is the only reality that matters. Her timeline, even if it doesn't match up with our timeline, if it doesn't match up factually with the timeline, time is a social construct. So her own time is just different than the rest of ours, I guess.
I get the why. Like, if I started dating right away, if I started going out with my friends and like drinking and living it up and doing whatever, it would have been an amazing distraction. I would not have had to think about how sad I was, how angry I was, how hard it was, how confusing it was to like go through a divorce and deal with attorneys and figure out financials. And like, it was so overwhelming to me. And I 1,000,000% could have distracted myself in a bunch of different ways. And I just sat in it. You know, if you read my last book, which is all about going through a hard thing, I talk about sitting in it. You got to sit, you got to allow yourself to feel how painful these things feel. What did I need to learn? What am I still learning from this process? And I went through every emotion there was. And I just made myself, like I told you, sat on that back patio. I mean, hundreds of hours have been logged on my back patio, just thinking or crying or praying or journaling or just trying to get myself to, raise above the pain that I was in that moment, because I have to suck it up because the kids are on their way, or I've got to go make dinner, I've got to do bedtime or whatever. And I spent a lot of time alone. I was talking to, if y'all heard when I interviewed Jay Shetty here on the podcast, he's become a very sweet friend. I actually just got to hang out with him in LA earlier this week. And, he and I talked about this idea of when you're alone, there are two ways that people describe it. Some people call being alone lonely, and some people call it solitude. And one of those is empowering and intentional. And one of those, lonely, feels immediately sad or wrong. And I actually think there's something incredibly valuable about being alone with your thoughts. Not to say it's easy all the time, but I spent a lot of time by myself. And let's see, 11 or 10 months before I started dating again, just like alone. And
that just feels like another technical thing, like a thing that she's saying to make the reality of the situation seem like something that's socially acceptable, because it was in February that she posted the video talking about being on a dating app, but she was already on the dating app when the video came out. So technically, yes, maybe you weren't looking for anybody to date for those 10 months, but I feel like she's going based on the timeline that she has made public as opposed to the actual reality of the situation. And like, ordinarily, this would not matter. Like, who cares? You move on in your own time, in your own way, doing whatever is right and fitting for you. But with Rachel's history of presenting things falsely and in a way that's disingenuous, it's like every little detail becomes important because it's building and building and building on lies that she has told before. And again, I don't like being this person. I don't like being this nitpicky whatever. But Rachel Hollis just has so much fraudulent behavior, and I hate when people get swindled by stuff like this. So it's like every little thing that she says in this podcast that I can find an inconsistency in, or that I feel is, not completely truthful or not fully representing what actually happened, I feel like I have to call it out. And I feel like we're the first half of this, I was really empathetic for Rachel. And I'm like, yes, I understand. I disagree with some of these things, but I can get where you are coming from. And while it might have been a little bit tone deaf in certain areas, I had that understanding for her and just like getting wrapped up in the experience of listening to her storytelling. But as the episode has gone on and on and on, I'm like, oh, you're still the same Rachel. You're still the same Rachel that you always were, who's presenting things in the way that is most beneficial to you and your business, which, fine, sure, do what's best for your business. Obviously, everybody puts on a fake persona for social media. Well, not necessarily fake, but curated, I guess. I talked about this on Instagram about how I post a lot of happy pictures with monks and beans, but I don't want it to be lost on anybody that this is really hard. This is a lot of work. This is a lot of dealing with their past traumas and trying to prevent any future traumas and trying to maintain good relationships with bio parents and their extended family and not alienating or isolating anybody and dealing with beings and the terrible twos and teething and the defiance that comes along with that. And there's so much that you don't see. And I don't ever want to come on here and be like, we got two kids dropped off at our doorstep and it's been perfect ever since. But I'm also not going to come on here and be like, oh my God, it was the hardest night ever. I slept 2 hours and I had to go to work and like, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, I'm not saying that Rachel should come on social media and just constantly be talking about bad things or tough things or like tearing herself down. But it's very dangerous to come onto the internet and pretend that, oh, we have these little road bumps here and there. I mean, we have to make sure we have our weekly makeout sessions to keep the spark alive because otherwise we're just so busy that it never would happen and blah, 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 blah. Like coming on and presenting near perfection but still putting those little things of like, oh, but we still go through this, we're just like you, we still have this, but overall things are going great for us, and I'm a business guru and I'm a mom and I'm a wife and I'm healthy and I have all these things going for me. And if you follow me in every area of your life, you can accomplish all these things too. That's dangerous. That creates false expectations for your followers of, well, if Rachel can do it, I can do it. If Rachel tells me that this is something I need to do, I got to do it because I want my life to be as great as hers. When you're not getting the full story, you're not getting the full picture. Nobody is like at 100% in every area of their life all the time.
The first, like, I remember my girlfriend who was going through divorce, she was like, how long until it doesn't feel like you want to die? Like, how long until it doesn't, you don't wake up every day and remember and just want to crawl back in bed? And I was like, 6 months. Yeah, I would say 4 months of really feeling like you have no idea how you're going to survive. And then 2 months where it's still really bad, but you can manage a lot better. And then you start to feel better and you start to feel hopeful. And to be honest with you, I started dating in March, but like never, ever with the intention of it being anything serious. I think you guys maybe heard me talk about this, or maybe saw it on Rach Talk on the YouTube channel.
That speculation was right. So she posted in February about being on a dating app. March 29th, the video of Motorcycle Man that she would not name. And then in June, like giving the actual introduction of her first kiss since divorce and talking about how she's dating somebody and all that. So
I told you the story about like I got on a dating app, but I got on a dating app because I wanted like friends to go out with, not because I wanted to make out with somebody. And P.S. that was
you don't get on a dating app to make friends. If you want to make friends, get on Bumble BFF. I'm sure there's like a celebrity version of that because you wouldn't want to just get on any old app. But come on, dating app just to make friends. Okay, Rachel.
terrifying for me to figure out how to date again. And it just so happens, or I guess again, I don't believe in coincidence here. It didn't just so happen, but the first person that I became friends with, I ended up falling in love with. And I think that's because God, in her infinite wisdom, was guiding this process and knew the kind of person that I needed to, kiss for the first time when I didn't know what I was doing and I was freaking out and like, I didn't know where to put my hands, or I just, like it's crazy. And I'm so grateful for the beauty and the serendipity and how it all came to be. But there is no way that I would be healthy enough to be in this beautiful relationship if I hadn't spent all those months by myself.
Now let's just pause real quick and take it back to how she said God in her infinite wisdom. I find it fascinating how after the divorce, Rachel has kind of stepped away from targeting that I wouldn't necessarily say conservative, but majority like young Christian audience, like with more traditional beliefs. Before, I would say her persona in terms of religion was I love Jesus, but I cuss a little. And now, reading just like the first chapter of her Didn't See That Coming book because I could not get through any more of that. It was like, ha, I dropped an F bomb. And she's moving away from like what her audience, what their perception of God is likely to be as a whole, which is very traditional and referring to God in the masculine, which we've talked about this before. My default is God is masculine because there's so many comparisons in the Bible of God's a good father and all this stuff, you know. But obviously, we know my feelings on how the Bible has been interpreted over the years. So I just kind of default to that because that's what I grew up with. But ultimately, as we've spoken about in my video about Classically Abby, God is genderless. The divine is genderless. You know, gender, first of all, is a social construct, but sex is also an earthly thing, an anatomical thing. The divine does not have a physical body, so the divine is not he or she. But Rachel's audience prior to divorce would have more than likely perceived the divine as he. And so it's interesting to me that she's moving away from this and going into more, I guess, progressive beliefs or like feminist presentations of her beliefs and her faith system. And it just makes me wonder if this is a natural evolution of her as she's gotten older, or if the way she presented her beliefs previously was a little bit disingenuous, maybe a bit of smart marketing because you knew who was going to buy your books and what they wanted to hear.
Processing things. So if you have to go through something hard like this, I hope you will allow yourself to sit in it for as long as you need. I think, it is sort of like the hot topic. I get a bajillion DMs about this and lots of comments and questions on YouTube, and everybody wants information about dating and what that's like and the boyfriend and the whole thing. And I'm making a really conscious decision. I'm fine to talk about it because I think, number one, I think it's hilarious because you would not even believe how freaking terrible I am. For all that I'm confident and I think I am cool and I know what I'm doing, I was such a freak I was so nervous. I was so anxious for months. I couldn't speak. Same person, same man, same situation. It's a shock. It is beyond belief that this human kept being yeah, let's go on another date, because I would literally just stare into his eyes and feel like I was dying. Why are you so beautiful? And then it was ridiculous. It was just ridiculous. Just let's go with that. So it's a miracle that anybody wanted to keep talking to me, even though I was so clearly not good at dating. But I am being very conscious of this is something so precious. And my last relationship, I didn't know better. And so it was so present on social media, and it was something I talked about so much. And something as precious as your love, I want to be very careful with how and when that is out in the world. And it's so funny to me when we're out at a restaurant or we're taking a walk or we're getting coffee or whatever, and I see, a listener of the podcast, or I see a reader, a fan or whatever, see us and realize oh, this is the guy. And it makes me really laugh, because I feel like people feel like they have some sort of insider thing of this person. And I know there's blogs about it and random internet things about who I'm dating, but it's just this sweet, precious thing. So I'm keeping it real close to my heart. So I'm talking about dating and what that looks like, but I'm not really talking about who he is or any of that stuff. So I know there are questions, but that's the why, in case you're wondering. The last thing that I'll say about what I have learned in this year that I feel is so powerful, and I think is sort of something we've all gone through, even if you weren't going through a breakup or moving into a new place, is I am really loving the reminder that you can redefine and reframe your life at any moment. In 2020, we were forced to redefine and reframe our lives, right? COVID meant that whatever we thought was true wasn't, and things we thought could never be taken away were. And I never thought I'd get used to wearing a mask. I never thought that I would be in lockdown. I never thought that I wouldn't get to see my friends for months and months. I never thought that we would live in fear. Like, there's a million things that happened that I never thought could happen. Our whole world got shifted.
Whole little side note. But when she said, I never thought I'd get used to wearing a mask, I can remember when, COVID first came to the US and was getting serious, and we went into those, time restrictions of, and unless you're traveling for a medical necessity or a business related reason, whatever, you got to stay home and you might get pulled over, blah, blah, blah. And we started wearing masks, and it was just so foreign and uncomfortable and whatever. But about 6 months in to wearing masks, I remember one night I went out to the store for something, got back in my car, put my hand sanitizer on, took my mask off, drove home, parked, and reached and put my entire mask on and turned off my car. And I was like, hold on, I'm going into my home. So we're about 6 months into this. I have just reflexively put a mask on to go into my home. 6 months is what it would take to indoctrinate me into anything. It is what I've come to. That's my my level of indoctrination. So if anybody's trying to get me into a cult, this is totally joking. I'm not going to join a cult. But if I ever did, it would be about a 6-month timeline that anybody had to get me out, because after that point, I'm fully ready. I'm fully committed.
Its axis. And what I'm reminded of is that in the world getting shifted on its axis, I made a decision that was the right decision for me. And I know that that is such a bold statement. It freaking shouldn't be. But I made a decision that was the right and healthy choice for myself and my children. And it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks of the choice that you make for yourself, whether or not you have kids. You are allowed to make change. You are allowed to ask for more. You are allowed to demand that someone keep their word. You are allowed to speak your truth. You are allowed to have the same rights that your partner does. I think a lot of times, this is nothing. I love men. I'm raising 3 of them. This is nothing against men. I have so many, my closest, guy friends. I love men. I'm not bashing men, but so often women are scorned for wanting literally just what is equal to what their husband or their boyfriend gets from them on the regular. So you are allowed to ask for whatever you need. And if you don't get it, you are allowed to have an issue with that. And, maybe you do what I did. And it's years of conversations and trying and working and doing what you can. And maybe you find a way. Maybe you do fix the pieces that are broken and it becomes something more beautiful and stronger and greater than it was before. That's amazing. So freaking amazing. But also, if it can't, because sometimes it's not meant to keep going. I was thinking about this today, I can't remember if I told y'all. I think I told y'all that I got to meet Dave's girlfriend finally. And she's so sweet, so kind, exactly, what I knew she would be. And to see them together and they're so happy and they complement each other so well. And I think of me and my boyfriend and how I never could have I could not have written a script of the kind of man that I would want and need, because I literally didn't even know that this kind of human existed. I wouldn't even have known to ask for him. But now being with him and then Dave being with Heidi, I'm like, oh yeah, clearly if this is who you move on to, and we moved on to people that were so different from each other, but so complementary of who we are, it's such an example of the fact that it had run its course, and that's okay. Not only is it okay, I think it's beautiful. People want to look at a divorce and see that it ended after 18 years and it's a failure. No, it's not a failure. I consider my marriage a massive success. A massive success. We have 4 beautiful children. We're still friends. We're still a family. We are making choices now that are better for us. And if they're better for us, that means they're going to be better for the kids. And so, okay, there are conservative people who don't believe in divorce and great. Then you live that out in your life. But those people don't get to tell you or me or Dave or anybody else how they get to show up in the world or what's right for them or what's good for their family. And I just want to encourage you, man, if you're going to have to go through something like divorce, you're going to have to go through a breakup, I freaking hope that you can come out of the other side of it with a clearer idea of who you are. If you're going to have to walk through hell, I hope you come out the other side forged in the flames. Like, oh yeah, I went through it and I didn't go through it for nothing. I went through it so I can live an authentic life as myself. So I sit on the back patio now and I'm not sitting there to heal. I'm sitting there celebrating this beautiful life that I get to live. And it's still hard and it's still complicated and it's still messy. There's still 4 kids that are screaming and it's still navigating, ex-husbands and new girlfriends and boyfriends and Thanksgiving and we're all together. And what is this like? There's still so much messiness in this, but it's good. And I am telling you guys, a year ago today, I slept. I'm taping this for you in my bedroom. And I remember sleeping on this floor.
I'm taping this in my bedroom. I'm literally sitting on my bed thinking about how I need to find a different setup because I'm like hunched over the laptop instead of leaning back against my pillows. Twinsies!
This wooden floor. And I had a pillow and 2 blankets. And I remember feeling so discouraged.
Girl, you couldn't buy an air mattress. You didn't have an air mattress already in your home. Maybe Ray Ray's not above narrative storytelling as opposed to factual storytelling, but I find it so hard to believe that she slept on the floor. Hotels were open. There weren't the, typical amenities. Things were very different, but she could have stayed at a hotel. She could have stayed at a hotel until she got an air mattress or a bed. There are ways to make it work. So unless she purely did this out of, this is going to make a great story one day, I do not buy that is how this happened.
Like, what the hell am I going to do? And I remember crying that night. And I also remember, even in the pain, I remember this knowing or this voice deep inside of me that just knew that this was right. I'm saying that in case there are those of you who are in something that is painful and you just need to listen for that still small voice that is speaking to you and guiding you through the time that you're in. That voice is there. And it was here with me a year ago. And it's here with me now. And if you're in a really hard season, like I was a year ago today, I want you to know it gets better. It gets better. If you do the work and you honor yourself and you're graceful with your heart and you strive to love yourself well and take care of yourself well, it will get better. And you are strong enough to keep going. I love you guys. I hope this was helpful. I hope that if you are going through something similar, that maybe it spoke to your heart. And if you know someone who's going through something similar, I hope you'll consider sending them this episode to listen to.
She's doing the outro, so we are good to move on. Now that we've gone through that, y'all have heard all of my thoughts. I don't really have anything additional to add that I didn't add throughout the reaction of this podcast. I want to hear what you think. I guess I'm just curious if y'all think she's being truthful because, again, like I said, first half, she had me. I was getting slowly wrapped around her finger, and then we shifted into, I don't know how true this is. I don't know how real this is. I feel like this is an attempt at coming back and being relatable, but Rachel has made it very clear. She's not relatable. If she's relatable to us, she's doing something wrong. So I don't really know what her angle is. I do think there were some good points and some good encouragement in there, but at the same time, so much of it just felt false to me. And I don't like that. I don't like listening to something and feeling like I'm being lied to, but there were good things I suppose we can take from this. And going forward, if you guys like this format, I would like to focus on these life gurus or self-help, personal development, manifestation, law of attraction. There's so much content out there on different podcast platforms. And, podcast is how I first got into law of attraction and manifestation and really focusing more on expanding my concept of the divine and my perception of money and what was possible for my life and making these changes. But I will say there were a few times where I bought into somebody and then only later did I realize, they were feeding me some bull. So I don't want anybody to get taken in by someone who is looking to, I don't want to say swindle, but I don't know, put out falsehoods that they can profit from, give false hope and sell these stories, literally sell stories about how to get the perfect life or how to get the life that you want or the life that they have, or buy my course and you can live like me and you can accomplish all these things, and you can go from living on your grandma's couch to traveling to Greece every other month. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but there are some people who give out that air. And so I just don't want anybody to get taken in by these things or feel bad that they're doing something wrong, that they're not living up to their full potential because they're not following this influencer or that influencer. And so I really do want to just call out those harmful falsehoods that could negatively impact people's lives. Let me know if that is something that you would like to see on this channel, or again in a podcast form, published on like Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all of that. And let me know what you thought of this episode. If you thought Rachel was being genuine, if you felt like you were being lied to throughout it, any takeaways that you had, I would love to hear it. So go ahead and leave all of your thoughts down below. And while you're doing that, if you would consider liking this video or subscribing to my channel, that would be incredible. And if you're subscribed already, thank you so much. I am so appreciative of you, and I love being able to just sit here, hang out with you, and talk about whatever. With all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and let you go. Thank you so much for listening. Please be kind to people, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.